Well, the spring game was this weekend, and some are calling for a quarterback competition. We'll talk about it.
You are Locked On Mississippi State, your daily podcast on the Mississippi State Bulldogs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On Mississippi State your first listen every single day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Well, thanks for joining us today. My name is Jaron. You can check out my work on Athlon Sports. A lot of college football writing. NFL draft is happening this week. We have a lot of content over there. That's Landon. Follow him on social media. You can have both of our social media at the bottom of your screen. Follow Locked On Mississippi State on social media as well. All right, Landon, we got to get into this. The spring game happened this weekend. We touched on it yesterday, but as of yesterday, we didn't really get into the unofficial stats as of yet. But now it's time to get into these stats because they were a little eye-opening on some of them. We obviously talked about the offensive struggles, and want to just clarify again, these are unofficial stats. Everything that I read said that the reporters had to kind of take the stats for themselves and keep them for themselves. So they are unofficial. But in the game, Blake Shapen, 12 of 17, 104 yards. He had 4 carries for negative 10 yards. Kamario Taylor was 8 of 13 for 124 yards, a touchdown, 4 carries for negative 14 yards. And Luke Kromenhoek was 5 of 12, 45 yards, 6 carries, and 12 yards on the ground. So what are you thinking? I've seen a lot of people saying, hey, let's just go with Taylor. And we touched on that at the end of yesterday's podcast. But what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, there were people saying, who were at the game that the offense looked the best when Taylor was the quarterback. And some of that may be because, as we talked about, the offensive line struggles. And Taylor does have that escapability, that elusiveness that would allow him to extend plays and make something out of nothing if the line does break down. As much as I'm a fan of him and think he is the answer long-term, I'm still not ready to pull the trigger on him going out there just yet. Personally, I think you have to give Shapen the shot just because Taylor is seen as a developmental piece. Yes, he does appear to be a lot further along than many people expected him to be at this point, but you don't want to risk him, like we talked about, his confidence or just getting into some bad habits of bailing too early just because you want to get him out there.
Yeah, you have to protect him, and that's the coach's job, to protect your players. And with this team, it's probably best that Shapen runs out and is the starting quarterback, because we talked about, and you mentioned it there, the offensive line is not good, and a senior, a veteran like Shapen's going to be able to handle that better, and he's going to be able to process everything quicker. Whereas Taylor is going to be more raw, but his athletic ability is going to be a little better, obviously a lot better, really. And so maybe he's going to make things happen that Shapen just wouldn't be able to physically. But Taylor had several scrambles that turned out to be pretty decent plays, but ultimately got called back, and Shapen did too. But it's just I think the issue is he was so much farther along than people thought he was watching the spring game that's why the controversy is here.
Yeah, he's kind of opened a lot of eyes, but hey, this guy might be if we had to play him, it'd be fine, but maybe he's just a year away instead of being 2 years away. But if he's this close, even if the season goes down, it just everything starts falling apart. I think you would have to see why it's falling apart for me to say put him out there. Because if it is the offensive line continues to get worse, you don't want him to get out there. Because even if he's scrambling around making plays and isn't taking the hits, which is a huge concern, it becomes he's developing a bad habit of bailing too soon. So if he does have a good line in 2 years, he's not sitting in the pocket and letting a play develop. He's break and contain at the first sign of anything happening and is just gone. And that really hurts his development as a quarterback, even though, it is a lot of fun to watch when that happens.
Yeah, and playing devil's advocate, some people say, hey, that's a risk you take, and some players, they don't fall into that stuff, and they don't ever have issues with that, and you just have to risk and see if which kind of player he is. And also, I'm with a lot of people when they say, unless a guy is a solidified starter and he's a really good player, maybe he's a future NFL player, he started a lot of games for you. Unless he's someone like that, you have to be open to whatever happens at every position, not just quarterback, but every position. Because if Taylor's just outperforming Shapen, I think you and I agree Taylor's ceiling is so much higher that if he's outperforming him now, you might just go with it.
You might. And I think the most telling part of this conversation is we're not even talking about Kromenhoek. He's not in the conversation at all. To me, the only way he's in the conversation for getting meaningful snaps is if you've kind of committed – season's been okay. You've committed to redshirting Taylor and something happens to Shapen with like one game left and you're not going to burn Taylor's red shirt for that final game, then you just run Kromenhoek out there. But to me, I think he's just out of the equation. He's the guy who's just there if things go really wrong. But yeah, if Taylor's outperforming Shapen every turn, you don't worry about how old he is. You just put it out there. But if it's close, I'm always kind of one of the people where if it's like the same, you go with the experience in that, depending on the situation, which in this situation, I think you have to kind of protect him from himself in certain situations.
Yeah. And hey, it was a 9-0 game and Taylor led the 2 scoring drives. So that's another thing that you're like, okay, the offense, like you mentioned earlier, the offense was clicking better when he was out there at quarterback. Now, Shapen did lead a field goal drive early in the game that ended up being missed. But overall, Taylor also threw a touchdown that got called back, and then he did throw another touchdown. Then they got a field goal. So overall, the offense did perform better with him. And one thing that we do also know is if an offensive line is really bad, a guy that is very fast and agile like Taylor is and can create plays with his legs, sometimes it benefits having him back there to kind of make up for some of those deficiencies. So it'll be interesting to see what they decide to do. I don't think you go quarterback controversy yet, but I don't think it's also one of those things where you're just not open to the idea at all. If you're Levy, I think you have to see who plays better going down the stretch. Usually in the fall, leading up to the games, that's when you start throwing the playbook at these guys. How does he handle it at that point?
Yeah, it's not time to go full QB controversy yet, but he's Taylor's pushed the door open. He hadn't kicked it wide open, but he's got it cracked now. And the other way to mitigate those offensive line issues is a quick passing game, which is one of the things Shapen is very good at.
Yeah.
And he's not fast, but he's not immobile back there.
So no, he can run.
It's not like you're going from a statue to someone who's running a 4.4. He's got a little bit of mobility. I mean, you have to let them play it out. And for as long as possible, you need to give Taylor reps with as many of the ones as you can to really see what he's got. Because that's another thing. We don't, the receiver combinations that were in the game aren't necessarily going to be that were in the spring game might not be who they're going to be throwing to as much in the fall. So that could also play a part into how the stats shook out.
Well, and we'll get into more of it tomorrow. I don't want to really dive into it today, but they've also had some visitors on the offensive line for the transfer portal that came into town. And so you don't know what that's going to look like. Obviously, we talked about yesterday's podcast, just how bad the offensive line played in the spring game. And Levy talked about that as well. We'll talk about that tomorrow. But that could be good news for someone like Taylor, also someone like Shapen, if they're able to at least get some guys out of the portal that can at least bolster this offensive line. Because I think you and I both agree if they go into the season with the offensive line they have right now, it doesn't matter who you put back there at quarterback. It's going to be a long year. Yeah,
they do need to improve that line. And some of it, they might just be able to coach them up. That could be some of it. It's just, maybe Little has a slightly different way of approaching the blocking, whether it's how he teaches technique, his preferred way of getting into sets, something like that. Maybe that can help a little bit, but you need more talent on it because if you are talent deficient at the offensive line, you are going to get destroyed at every level. I mean, you see that all the time. Someone loses the left tackle, like a very good team can lose a star left tackle, and all of a sudden they look terrible. Yeah. So you got to get that fixed before anything else.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so the Diamond Dogs were back on the diamond this weekend in a really crucial series. We talked about it going into the series. Things didn't turn out well. We'll talk about that. We'll break it down. That's coming up after the break. Well, there's nothing like the atmosphere of an NBA playoff game. Every bucket, every defensive stop, every moment feels huge. It's electric in the arena, and with Gametime, you can be a part of it without the stress of last-minute ticket hunting. Gametime makes it fast and easy to get playoff tickets, even when demand is sky high. Prices on the app actually go down as tip-off gets closer, and their last-minute deals can save you up to 60%. Like I mentioned, those last-minute deals, those are always big for everyone. And it's not just for sporting events. You can save up to 60% off buying last-minute for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, whatever you like. They have it all. The all-in pricing means no surprise fees at checkout. What you see is what you pay. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right, well, thanks for making Locked On and Mississippi State your first listen every single day. Part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, Landon, right before break, I talked about this briefly. Baseball team back on the diamond this past weekend in a series against Florida that we said is very winnable, and you can continue that momentum you just built. You just won a big series against Alabama. Let's start building some momentum. And you go out and you lose 2 out of the 3 against Florida. One of those is a 13-3 mercy rule.
Yeah, they pretty much chose to do the exact opposite of continue the momentum. And I would like to know how many times a team has had a reliever come in and give up 6 runs without giving up an out in back-to-back games.
Yeah, and this is, and we were talking about that. We were texting about that this weekend. That's fireable offense. I keep seeing fans talk about how Lemonis needs to be gone, but we got to keep the pitching coach. No, no, you do not. After what I just saw the last 2 weekends, no, you do not. And then in the one on Saturday, that was the closest one of the 2 losses. Obviously, it was 8-11. I believe it was like 7-8, maybe the 7th inning. I can't remember the exact score, but they hit a ground ball, just gets past the third baseman, goes into left field, and they send a guy from second base all the way home. And of course, he gets thrown out by a mile at home plate because it wasn't like it got past the outfielder. It was just a infield ground ball that just got past the third baseman, and the left fielder threw him out. I don't even think he was halfway down the line yet. It was terrible coaching.
So this was bad. And even in the game you win, you give up 8 runs.
Yes.
Even when you win, you pitch bad. That has to change. I mean, if Lemonis wants to save his job, he maybe should fire the pitching coach immediately. And maybe he can scapegoat him and save himself another year. But
right. And it's and I do want to say it's not, it's not just Justin Parker, by the way, the pitching coach. It's not just him, because Lemonis can also step up and say, hey, we got to go somewhere else. So it's on Lemonis too. But I was at the point, going into the series where I was like, all right, Lemonis, I think, is going to save his job. I think things are starting to turn around. They're starting playing good baseball.
They're not.
By the second game, as soon as I saw him get thrown out when they tried to send him all the way home, I said, fire everyone. I was back to firing everyone.
That's my move.
Yeah, it was so bad.
And I will say, baseball is the one that is the hardest to really – like a coach to directly impact the game on the field. It is the most preparation based of them. But when you're leaving guys in way too long on the mound, making those type of decisions to send people when you clearly should not send them, and when you have all these things that have been going wrong all season and you just choose to continue to let them happen. I mean, and I would hate to say, they played a pretty clean series. They only had 3 or 4 errors, which is insane that is a clean series for them. Yeah. Like between that and how bad the pitching is in stretches, because when we factor in that South Carolina series, the 2 midweek games, and the Bama series, the pitching seemed to be kind of coming together, and they were pitching pretty well. And now it's fallen apart back to where it was 3-4 weeks ago.
Yeah, and the score was 9-8 in the 7th when they sent the runner around. But it's just terrible. I mean, and like you mentioned, the pitching, they allowed over 8 runs all 3 games. The 2 losses, they allowed double-digit runs. I mentioned the 13-3 mercy rule in the first game to start the series off. I mean, and this was at home. That's another thing. This is at home, and you're getting blitzed like this. And now you get Ole Miss on Tuesday. You know, Ole Miss is a very good team. You're probably losing that. Auburn, again, I talked about this last time. A couple of weeks back, it looked like a really winnable series. Auburn has completely turned it around. They're number 11 in the country, and it's on the road. So now that's not looking good. Memphis, again, you should win that one. And then Kentucky, I know, took one from Texas, but overall you should win that series.
Well, we said that this week.
Yeah, I know. You're right. And then it's a series against Ole Miss, and then, you know, Missouri's not any good. You have to sweep that to end it. But you were looking at several winnable series to kind of build momentum into a possible regional berth. Are they going to make it again?
It's going to be hard. They're going to have to start stringing the wins together, but how do you give up this? It's not like Florida was a juggernaut. Like they gave up this many runs to a team that you should not give up that many runs to. Right. It's just, man, I don't like, it's hard to talk about it because you don't know it's one of those series where everything went wrong. Like even in the game you won, it still didn't go great to where it's kind of like, what do you say went wrong? Oh, everything went wrong.
Yeah, right. Right. And Florida's a team that coming into the series against Mississippi State, they had won, they won 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in a row, but 3 of those was against Missouri, who's terrible. Another one was against Stetson, who's also terrible. Before that, they lost 3 in a row to Vanderbilt. Then they lost 2 out of 3 to Ole Miss. Then they lost to Florida State. They lost all 3 to Georgia. So they lost 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 out of 11 games before they got to the Missouri series, or they beat Florida State in a midweek game, then the Missouri series. They had lost 9-11. So it wasn't a team that was playing good baseball either.
It wasn't. And you just played worse baseball. That's really all that mattered. I mean, this was so bad. And if you're going to get anything, you pretty much have to win out. I mean, it's not quite that desperate, but you really have to pretty much win 2 out of 3 from everywhere,
right,
at worst at this point. And you got to make a little bit of noise in the SEC tournament. I mean, it's really a long shot to go anywhere at this point with how this team's playing. I mean, you want to beat Ole Miss, but with how you're playing, can you have any confidence in saying that this team is going to show up?
The only confidence you have is, it's a rivalry series, a rivalry game, and then the series later on in the season, and that's the only thing you can hold on to. Does that
actually give you any confidence, though?
Right, but that's the only confidence you have because it's like, well, anything can happen, kind of thing. But yeah, I mean, Florida's playing terrible baseball, and you lose a series in a series we talked about should have been a momentum building series, and instead just zaps any confidence you've built up over the last week or two.
Yeah, and we thought pitching was going to get going right. It didn't. So now you're kind of back to the drawing board on what pitchers can you rely on? Because some of the ones that gave up these huge runs, these massive rallies to Florida in the late innings, were the guys who came in relief last weekend and shut down Bama. So it's who you trust, because there for a long time it was, well, we trust Pico. We don't know who else is going to step up. And then for 2 weeks, other people stepped up. Now it's back to, well, we trust Pico. Who else is
we trust. That's about all we trust right now.
You better throw a shutout from 9 innings of shutout, then you can win 1.
Right, and he pitched in 1 game, and he wasn't bad in that game. 5 innings pitched, allowed 6 hits, only 2 earned runs. Struck out 11. Yeah, and career high. And you had talked about that on yesterday's show, I believe it was. So, but then you bring in the reliever, and it's downhill after that. And so, and again, like you mentioned, I still cannot fathom it happening once. Should never have happened, but okay. But a pitcher comes in, relief pitcher, allows 6 straight runs before getting pulled. But then it happened again. How does that happen?
The only time that should ever happen once is if the game is already out of hand and you're bringing in some guy to just try to get you out of the game.
Yeah.
And then it's like, all right, he's doing that. We're not even getting an out. We have to try someone else. That's the only time it should happen once.
Right.
And it happened 2 days in a row.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's so bad you have to laugh at it. Like, it's,
Everyone's got to be fired at this point. Let's just get to it. But all right, the softball team was also in action. It was a very good measuring stick series against the Oklahoma Sooners. We'll talk about that and how they did. That's coming up.
Baseball season is in full swing, and there's no better way to get in on the action than with Prize Picks, the best place for daily fantasy sports. With Prize Picks, you pick more or less on at least 2 player projections, and if you're right, you can win up to 1,000 times your cash. Whether it's strikeouts, RBIs, or first inning runs, Prize Picks keeps every game exciting. Building my lineup this week, I'm picking Aaron Judge for more than 1 home run and Shohei Ohtani for more than 1 stolen base. It's pretty easy, and those are pretty easy picks. Fast and simple, setting a lineup takes less than 60 seconds, and when you win, your payout is quick, safe, and secure. Exclusive promos. I always take advantage of Taco Tuesday, where Prize Picks offers discounts on select player projections for even more value. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONCollege for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game.
All right, well, thanks for making Locked On Mississippi State your first listen every single day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, Landon, so like I talked about right before the break, the softball team was also in action. On face value, you're going to look at it and say, hey, they got swept. That sucks. But they're playing the Oklahoma Sooners, number 2 team in the country, on the road at Oklahoma. One game was in Oklahoma City. The other 2 were in Norman. You lost 0-4 the first game, 5-6 the second game, 6-9 the third game. But in the last 2 games, you were up 4-0 at points. And it just didn't come together. I thought it was a very good measuring stick series for them. I thought that showed that Oklahoma's elite. Obviously, they've won 4 straight national championships. They're probably the premier program in college softball. Yeah. Now,
fair statement.
Now they lost all those seniors, and so they're not as nearly as dominant of a team as they used to be. But they're still an elite program.
Very, very good.
And I would say Mississippi State showed they're just a tier below that.
Yeah, this series is kind of the exact opposite of what we saw from the baseball team. You just ran into a team that was better than you. You played well. You were in every game. They were just a little bit better. And in softball, those margins are so slim, so time. Like even the 4-0 game, that's a very tight game. That was a very, very tight win. So I think they played great overall. It's just you ran into one of the best teams in the sport this year and of the last decade.
Yeah. And they jumped up 4-0 in the first inning. I can't remember if it was in both games or if it was just that last game. And that's typically a game that you're probably going to put away. It was actually both games. I just looked it up. It was both games. Against other teams, you've zapped their confidence. You're putting them away. The issue is when you play the 4-time defending national champions, they don't blink an eye. They came back and scored 3 runs in the second game of the series. And then in the other game, the third game, I believe they scored 2 runs. Just that, the bottom half of the first inning. And just like that, they did. And just like that, it's 4-2. And then you come and score to make it 5-2, but then they tied up at the bottom of the second, and it's 5-5. And so a team like Oklahoma, they're not going to blink at something like that because they're an elite program. They've been there. They've played at the highest level. But most teams, you jump up 4-0 on them. Even most good teams, you're going to probably win that game because mentally you've just shook them.
And jumping up 4-0 on this OU team is an accomplishment in its own. I mean, how many times has that happened to OU over the last 4 years? I mean, you can probably count the times that's happened on one hand, and they did it back-to-back nights. Yeah. So I think it's encouraging. It proves you're competitive with the best of the best. Yeah. Now, once you get in the tournament, when you start playing those best, you play in the little round robin double elimination, really only got to take one from them. I mean, you're probably going to have to come back and get that second one later, but start off, you just got to get one. So
I think this is a super regional team. I really do. And I know some people are saying, there's no like if you don't win a game, there's no victory. What word am I trying to say? Moral victory. There's no moral victory that you get from that. You didn't win a game. Like moral victories don't exist. But I think those series are always good to kind of measure your stuff against the elites. How close are you? And Mississippi State, I feel like, showed this weekend that they're at least in the tier below. And if they play good softball, they can beat just about anyone. They might not be able to beat the elites, but they can beat a lot of teams. And that's why I think they're a super regional team this year.
Yeah, I thought you were about to get into a Jay-Z quote there with moral victories are for minor league coaches. But but no, I think this is one because it showed you right there. This team, it's going to depend on the draw a little bit, but that super regional is definitely in the mix for this team, and they proved it this weekend.
Yeah, no, I agree. All right, well, thanks for making Locked On Mississippi State your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the Locked On NFL Draft with Damian Parson and Keith Sanchez. As your favorite collegiate players get ready for the next level, get the latest draft rankings, rumors, and news every day. Find Locked On NFL Draft on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. Landon and I, we've talked about it many times. We have an NFL Draft breakdown episode from a couple weeks ago. You can go listen to that. Or Thursday morning, we will be doing another NFL Draft preview as the draft gets
favorite
off.
Time of year.
Yes, so check out that podcast as well. We'll talk about if we think any of our Mississippi State guys will get drafted, so you don't want to miss that. But I'm Jaron. Remember, check out my work over on Athlon Sports. A lot of college football, a lot of NFL draft right now. If you like the NBA, we're writing about that as well. College basketball, especially with the portal going on right now. That's Landon False, both on social media. Our ads are right below. Follow Locked On Mississippi State. We're on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Twitter. We're on all those, and so we're posting videos on all those Monday through Friday. So definitely check that out. And until next time, Hail State.
Hail State.